Hey everyone, welcome to Chapter 3, our discussion of the structure and function of the nervous system. So we're talking about some neuroanatomy this week. First up, let's talk about some general terminology we'll be using throughout the unit, as well as the meninges and the ventricle. Okay, so I'm going to go over some general terms that I'm going to be using throughout this unit to describe the relative position, some directional terminology. So first off, rostral, caudal. Rostrum means towards the front. Caudal is towards the tail, towards the back. Anterior, front. Posterior, back. Next is dorsal ventral. So dorsal being the back and ventral being sort of the underside. Notice that these are with respect to the neuraxis, which varies based on what sort of animal we're talking about, right? Like a quadrupedal animal like this alligator here, his neuraxis is going to look different compared to a bipedal animal like us, because our neuraxis curves here. So just something to pay attention to. The really easy way to remember which one is separate, dorsal versus ventral, is think about like a dolphin has a dorsal fin, right? The fin that's on its back. So if you think about a dolphin's dorsal fin, you can remember that dorsal is the back and ventral is the So next up is medial versus lateral. So this is sort of relative to the center line. Something more medial is close to the center. Lateral is further to the side. Let's outline some other terms that I'm going to be using throughout this unit. Ipsilateral. This means structures located on the same side of the body. So if I say that I'm referring to, I don't know, your arm and your ipsilateral leg, it would mean the arm and leg on the same side of your body. Contralateral means structures that are located on the opposite side of the body. So your arms are contralateral to one another. Superior just means above, and inferior means below. So it's not a value judgment. Like the superior colliculus is not better than the inferior colliculus. It just means it's located above. Medial means toward the middle of the body or away from the side. Lateral means towards the side of the body or away from the middle. Proximal means near, and distal means far. Those are just sort of relative terms. Okay, a little bit of words on terminology we use when we are slicing up a piece of tissue. So if we are cutting a brain into different sections, we can do a number of different ways. So if we do a frontal section, it's just sort of like taking a front slice like that, which produces, excuse me, a section like this one. So a frontal section. A horizontal section made here, so sort of like straight through, produces a section that looks like this. A sagittal section, which sort of comes straight down the middle, will produce a section that looks more like this. So sagittal is down the middle, frontal is straight like this, and horizontal is flat like that. So those are the different directions we can sort of generally slice in. Transverse is just sort of a cross section that can be made at any angle. Let's talk about some big divisions of the nervous system. First, central nervous system, brain and spinal cord. Basically, if your nervous system is encased in bone, it's part of the central nervous system. So your brain inside of your skull and your spinal cord within your spine, central nervous system. The peripheral nervous system is everything else. So nerves, which we call a bundle of axons located in the peripheral nervous system, including also peripheral ganglia, which are groups of cell bodies that are located in the peripheral nervous system. So I believe I mentioned earlier on that we refer to groups of cell bodies in the central nervous system as nuclei. So a nucleus is a cluster of cell bodies in the brain or spinal cord, whereas a ganglia or ganglion are groups of cell bodies located in the peripheral nervous system. Just a little nomenclature difference. All right, meninges. The meninges are the 3 layers of tissue that encase the central nervous system. We have dura, arachnoid, and pia. So first, dura mater is the outermost layer. It's tough and flexible. It's like a leathery outer coating that sort of protects the brain. Next is the arachnoid membrane. This is the middle layer. This is where cerebral spinal fluid occupies a lot of space here underneath the arachnoid membrane. And the pia mater is the innermost layer. It's thin and delicate It's almost like papery and very thin. This clings to the surface of the brain. So the subarachnoid space, this is the fluid-filled space that occupies the space between the arachnoid membrane and the pia mater. So this is a little cushion of space that is occupies between the arachnoid layer and the pia mater. Cerebrospinal fluid is a clear fluid that fills the ventricular system of the brain and the subarachnoid space. Okay, we can see here there's a little cross section of the meninges. You can see the dura mater is this thick outer layer, the arachnoid membrane, and then the subarachnoid space. You can see the inside here looks, these arachnoid trabeculae look kind of like spidery, like spider webs, hence the name arachnoid space. This part of the meninges is filled with cerebrospinal fluid. Below the arachnoid membrane in the subarachnoid space, we have the pia mater, that little thin papery layer that sticks to the surface of the brain. You can see also that these meninges exist in the spinal cord. So you can see down the extent of the spinal cord, we have the same structure in place. All the way down to the cauda equina, which is the bottom portion of the spinal cord. It gets its name cauda, meaning tail, and equina, like a horse, because it looks a bit like a horse's tail. Okay, ventricles. I've mentioned these sort of a little bit in passing. These are the hollow spaces within the brain that are filled with cerebrospinal fluid. The lateral ventricle, one of the two ventricles located in the center of the telencephalon. This right here is the lateral ventricle. So the third ventricle, located in the center of the diencephalon, is found right here. The cerebral aqueduct. This is a narrow tube that connects the third and fourth ventricles. It's located right here in the center of the mesencephalon. The fourth ventricle is here. The ventricle between the cerebellum and the dorsal pons, located in the center of the metencephalon. You can also see it a bit better in this diagram. You can see here in this figure the creation of cerebrospinal fluid and its path as it is circulated throughout the brain and through the the subarachnoid space. The choroid plexus is vascular tissue that can be found inside of the ventricles, and it produces cerebrospinal fluid. So interestingly enough, choroid plexus is what we would call a vascular epithelium. It's closer to skin cells. It is not nervous tissue, and it's not glial cells. It's something else entirely. And these population of cells are what produce our cerebrospinal fluid. Okay, that's it for our first unit in neuroanatomy, talking through directions and directional terms and the meninges. Next time, we're on to talking about neural development, where we will talk about all those words that I used, like metencephalon. It'll make a lot more sense after the next video.